Um, asalaamaaleykum mbokk yi maa ngi leen di nuyu yéen ñëpp seen tur ak seen sant comme ni ma ko dee defee rek diggoon naa leen daje bi tey ne tey dama am special interview with Honorable Halifa Sallah kon nag du ma def dara mooy rek ñu commencé interview bi because time bi yëpp jël naa ko tey xam ngeen ma comme lu ma leen dee wax rek man moom damay ñeme leet miin ngeen ko ci man ba pare so kenn du ko questionnaat su fekkee yéen ak maa dégga please wax leen ma ne yéen ak maa dégga su ko defee ma xam ne yéen ak maa dégga just give me a flash wala ngeen bindal ma yéen ak maa dégga su ko defee ma mun a go ahead with the interview yéen ak maa dégga Xadi Njaay su dee yaa ngi maa dégga wan ma ne yaa ngi maa dégga maa ngi gis flash yi waaye ba tey rek wax leen ma yéen ak maa dégga ok xaaral ma xoolaat ko bu baax dëgg la yéen a ngi doon xaar si suba maa ngi jégalu ci loolu noonu waaye comme li ma ko dee waxee rek xam nga rek suma affaire rek te daf ma jël longer than it usually take me pour ma put suma makeup bu on sunset because damaa ñëw mit si ki nga xam ne kii moom honorable la dama bokk ci moom sax si moom bugga ko suma xol bi ngir yàlla tax bokku ma nag benn parti nag waaye dama ko bugga gis nit bugga ko loolu yàllaa koo def ci nit tey nag comme ni ma ko dee defee rek ak ni ma ko dee waxee rek suma interview yu bari daf day nekk ci olof nag tey dafaa nekk lu nga xam ne dafaa nekk mix and blend li tax ma dee tàmbalee def interview si olof mooy my mom is my biggest fan te comme que moom jàngu te déggul English obviously dafa baax pour may koo def ci olof moo tax may dee wax ci olof waaye because suma question si ni ma ko bindee tey nag dina xaat nag pour ma bind ko wax ko ci olof so si English laa koo def nag maa ngi jégalu si loolu so mami bii tey jégalu naa asalaamaaleykum Hon.Halifa.
waaleykum salaam.
nuyu naa la.
fay naa la.
dalal la bu baax ci biir Sweden dalalaat la bu baax ci biir Sweden.
alhamdulilah.
ok maa ngi jégalu ci lateness bi nag xam nga jigéen rek comme ni ma la waxee dafa tegoon sama time rek bala maa ñëw fii. xam nga yow ku laa bit foog rek nga defar ba mu baax bala ngaa egsi.
alhamdulilah.
ok tey nag dañ ne exclusif bu Hon.Halifa Sallah te su ma ne exclusif man damaa jëlee ci suufa suuf egg ci kaw. su ma ne exclusif dama naan ne ma bàyyi la nga wax ñu kan mooy who is Halifa Sallah.
waaw fi ñu toll nii mu ngi mel ni mbir mi ñëw na ba toll foo xam ne jaar nañ ci coalition taxaw naa ci National Assembly election si dugg naa ci néegi député yi door nañ itam liggéey ci néegi député yi te néegi député yi daf day am jëflante ci wàllu ECOWAS mbooloo mi nga xam ne moo nekk ci suñu gox bi foofu ak African Union mooy réewi Afrique yi itam am nañ parlement am na parlement bu ñu ooyee itam EU mooy Europe seen dëkk yi yëpp ak ACP mooy dëkki Afrique yi Caribbean ak Pacifique dañ amati beneen assembly parlement boo xam ne bii boobu itam maa nga ca bokk mu mel ni daanaka liggéeyi parlement daal nekk na ci li ma dugg fi mu nekk nii loolu laa mun a gaarale kàddu gi noonu rek ne loolu foofu laa nekk léegi loolu mooy sumay liggéey
obviously juddu Gambia nga moo tax nga mun a toog ci parlement Gambia obviously
waaw xam nga su ma buggee wax fi ma jaar yëpp daanaka dinaa jël sa programme bi yëpp ci wax man maay kan waa ne yaakaar naa ne ñëpp xam nañ ne maay secrétaire général ci PDOIS mooy parti doy daanaka nit koo xam ne la dëgg-dëgg maa ngi bokk ci liggéeyi réew mi moo tax ma ne jarul dugg bu baax a baax ci man maay kan ci fànn googu waaw ne fi mu nekk ni sas biñ ma sas mooy nekk noppi nit ñi baati nit ñi ak buti nit ñi ci néegi député yi di wax li seen xalaat ak li leen a jëriñ looloo tax sax ma jóg gannaaw dañu am recess fi mu nekk ni ci weeri August néegi député yi daf doy tëj ndax nit ki mun a dem toppatoo ji yeneen moo tax ñu ma pour ma ñëw ci suufi Europe dem naa Norvège maa ngi Sweden damaa war a dem si Denmark ëllëg naa egg Austria ak Germany pour waxtaan ak ñi nga xam ne doomi Gambia lañu te bokk ci réew mi te nekk fii lool di liggéey di sonn di dundal ñu bari ñoo xam ne ñu nga ci réew ma su du toon ñoom daal lu bari du jàpp ca réew ma pour xam ci ni ñu toogee wax leen na réew mi toogee ndax réew mi dafa nekk réew yi diggante ndax ci coalition lañ nekkoon ba gañe léegi ñu ngi ci doxalin boo xam ne nañu ko ooyee nguuri jàppandal su ko defee loolu yëpp baax na pour waxtaan ko ñoom mu gën a leer te itam gis nga ni ñu ngi jóg di génne doomi Gambie yu bëri di leen delluwaat ci réew ma muy daal doomi Afrique yu bëri ñu bëri xamuñu lii xew te gannaaw maa ngi ci parliamentary EU ACP bi fokk rek am na lu ma ci xam moo tax itam pour ñu waxtaan ak ñi nga xam ne ñoo yore nguur yi itam ñu xam ci ñun li ñu toogee wax leen kàddu yoo xam ne dina tax ñu ëlbatiwaat seen xalaat ak seen doxalin ci wàllu seen jëflanteeg doomi Afrique yi fi toog ak yeneen réew yi fi toog.
comme maanaam bu ma déglu bu baax lii nga ne néegi député yi tëj.
waaw
moo tax nga jël di trip.
waaw
pour def ko waaye trip bi trip boo jëlal sa bopp la. ndax
déedéet ay doomi Gambie ñoom woote mbootaay.
amul dara pour defar Gambie government. trip
déedéet
waaw loolu dama bëggoon la ku laajte xam nga laajte dafa baax dafa lu war a leer la. parce que li tax ma di ko laajte
jóguma rek di wër te lii amul dara pour def ak government Gambie mooy ne doomi Gambie yi nga xam ne ñoo nekk ci suufi Europe ñoo jàppalante ak man pour ma ñëw waxtaan ak ñoom
li tax ma bëggoon a leeral foofu rek xam nga rek media dafa graaw
waaw
liñ ciy gis bor bu set surtout man mi ciy liggéey maa ko loolu laa mën a seede liñ ciy gis bor bu set ak liñ ciy wax bor bu set nit ñi naan ok Halifa government bi ñu ko jox xaalis muy ñëw di def raaw bi def ni nangam sangam looloo tax ma bëgg a ñu leeral ko pour wane ne government taxulaa jóg feelu la nga jóg def ñun waa réew mi ak beneen réew ñoo booloo dal di initiate sa ñëw fii.
mooy doomi Gambie xam nga man duma waxal ñooñu foog naa ñooñu wax na ñëpp dégg nañ gars yi Norway yi ñu ngi ci woon ñu ngi wax ci jaww ji ñëpp a nga xam ne ñoom ñoo jël seen alal ne Halifa Sallah ñëwal nga waxtaan ak ñun xam naa ku xam rek ni mbir yi day doxee dafa am ñoo xam ne ngir seen xam-xam ak seen man-man di nga leen oone ñëw leen ngeen joxe lecture loolu moom toujours muy ca réew ma muy fu nekk lañ maa woo ci àddina bi ne ñëwal nga wax ay xalaat yoo xam ne dina tax xeli nit ñi gën a yaatu seen xol itam gën a dal loolu moom lu lay xaw la dafa am nit ñoo xam ne dañuy jóg ñuy leen a ooyee ñuy joxe ji ay xalaat ñëwal nga waxtaan ak ñun ndax ñu xamee ci daanaka loolu mooy xew fi mu nekk nii oo nañ ma Norway dem naa waxtaan ak ñoom wane nañ na Stockholm ñëw naa waxtaan ak ñoom ma oo Denmark dinaa dem waxtaani ñu ma Austria dem ba Germany ñu ma doon woo sax France waaye nag loolu ci diggante bi la ñëw xew ñu bare maa oo ba tey sax waaye nag du ci mën a xëcc waaw soo loolu mooy soo nekkee nit koo xam ne mun ngaa wax lu tax nit mun cee jëriñu ñu bari dinañ la ci woo
wax dëgg ne yàlla wax dëgg
mooy jàngukaay yu mag yi nekk ci réew ma mu mel ni ci week bi ñetti yoon ba ñeneenti yoon dinaa dem ci symposium woote dem waxtaani mu mel ni façon yooyu rek la waaw
ok kon donc ma daal di dugg si questions yi ma la amaloon tey first one bi dama ne can you explain the functions of executive judiciary and legislation
wow that is very important and it's a very important question because many people take these things as an academic exercise, something that should be known by people who are in universities, that the ordinary people should not know these things. And that is why the emphasis is that knowledge must become the property of the common people, because Gambia had gone through a process and everybody should know that. Gambia was a colony, and to be a colony, it means that a foreign power will come and take control of your country. The Gambia as we know it was even created for us. It's not our creation, and that's what many people don't understand. That the British and the French agreed to draw the boundaries of the Gambia on the 10th of August 1889. That's why you now have this territory, and the objective of the British Crown was simply to have a territory where you can have a port and a navigable river so that trade will be facilitated with this region and the United Kingdom. By 1902, they have consolidated their power, and Gambia became a colony, and we became subjects. We did not have an executive, a judiciary, and a legislature that derived their powers from our consent. There was no constitution that gave us authority to decide our manner of government. That's what people should realize. That's why we had to work for independence. For decades, many people were working for independence. We cannot go into that history. We'll just mention the importance of the date. 1965 is when we attained the right to self-determination and independence. Self-determination means that we can now say what type of political life we are going to live so that we can have political independence. But we still had a governor in Banjul at the governor's residence. We had a prime minister. Why? Because still sovereignty did not reside with our country. We still had allegiance owed to a foreign monarch. That is why we had to have referendum, and on the 24th of April 1970 is when Gambia became a republic. Then we attained full right to self-determination and independence. When that happened, of course, we need schools, we need hospitals, we need roads, we need electricity, we need water supply. How are we going to get it? We said a government must provide this. And when you talk about a government, that is the executive. The government must provide the schools, hospitals, and all the things that we need. In order to provide those things, we must have a national budget. So a government has responsibility even to tax you so as to have the money that we call the government revenue, which must provide what we need. So therefore, the role of the executive, it is given power to make policies, to establish ministries, ministries of health, education, agriculture, information, roads, works, regional administration. So all sorts of ministries, so that the money, the revenue collected from us will be provided to those ministries so that they can give us education, health, agricultural development, and so on and so forth. That is the executive. The executive collects revenue, makes policies, establishes ministries, and implement the policies so that we can have the services that we need. We have the health we need, the education we need, the electricity we need, water supply we need, the clean environment we need. That is the role of the executive. So when you elect a president, that is the responsibility you are entrusting in his hands.
Okay. Let me come in there. am na ñu wax ne mënuñoo dégga waaye man dinaa yuuxu pour ñu dégga.
Waaw.
All right. Lu tax ma bëgg a ñëw foofu mooy dama bëggoon a xam why is the legislature and the National Assembly such a powerful institution to you, to the point ne instead of taking a ministry post, you took a National Assembly post. Why?
Thank you very much. When we say that the executive collects revenue and expends it to provide the services, you cannot get a president that will say, whatever I want, I'll just collect revenue from people and do what I want. Because the executive owes powers from the consent of the people. That is why you have the legislature. And that is the law-making body. You call it the separation of powers. It means that before the executive could levy taxes, it must have a law to do so. And therefore, it must come to the National Assembly. That is why every year the executive will bring its proposals to the National Assembly. We call it the estimates of revenue expenditure. That is what it intends to do to collect money from the population and how it intends to spend it is what you call the estimates. It must bring that to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly must approve within 14 days that this is the revenue and expenditure that the government intend to do in the next following financial year. So when that is approved, that is transformed into a law, and we call it an appropriation bill must be brought to the National Assembly so that we know that this is amount of money that we intend to give the executive, and this is the amount of money that it must spend to meet this and that services. So every ministry is allocated, wages and all are included, so that everybody knows that this is how the money is to be spent. So within 7 days, the National Assembly should consider that and then turn that into a law. So it means that that is the law that the government should follow. And if they fail to do so, the Auditor General will come and audit their accounts to see whether the money that was supposed to be collected has been collected and it has been spent the way it is supposed to be spent. And if that is audited, the Auditor General is required every year to come before the National Assembly and present the audited accounts of the government for the National Assembly to review, to see whether any particular department, any institution has actually misappropriated the funds. And if that is the case, then obviously they will have to repay that money, or actions will also be taken that could even be legal action. So in short, the National Assembly is an oversight institution which ensures that the resources of the country is not mismanaged. That's how important the National Assembly is. That is why the National Assembly is given powers in case the Constitution is violated or the funds of the country is misappropriated and misused. The National Assembly has powers to, in fact, even impeach the president for violation.
I was going to come to that because, to my understanding, I understand that if the National Assembly come together, sit down, and talk, they can actually impeach a president. They can impeach a president, not just in an adventurous manner, but if there is violation of the Constitution and if there is misappropriation of public funds, abuse of public funds. So in that sense, the National Assembly is very powerful. Not only that, the National Assembly under Section 75 of the Constitution has powers to cast a vote of censure against a minister, and has power to remove a minister from office for violation of the Constitution and for misappropriation or abuse of public funds. So any action that will bring the office of minister into disrepute can actually lead to the removal of that minister from office. So in short, the Constitution puts a minister in the hands of two powers, the executive and the National Assembly. And that is why the Constitution says that a minister has a responsibility to both the executive and the National Assembly. Okay. Yes. Okay. That is why every National Assembly sitting, National Assembly members have the powers to raise questions, and you send the questions in advance. 5 questions in advance to the ministries, and they are duty bound. No matter what work they are doing, they must stop that work and come and answer to the National Assembly to answer those questions. So if any law is to be made, a law starts with a bill. That bill must be brought to the National Assembly. It is the National Assembly that must examine it, and if it passes it, then that bill will now go to the President. The President will assent to it within 30 days, and then it is published in the Gazette within 30 days, then it becomes law. So that is why the National Assembly is the law-making body of the land. So for some of us, or those of us that keep questioning, why didn't he become a minister and he chose to become a National Assembly member, So at least this has answered a few of the questions, because a member of parliament is equally important as the minister. Well, what we are saying is that it is more powerful because it is the oversight institution. It is what should ensure that really government functions according to the law of the land.
And if you have a strong National Assembly which is independent and impartial, that is why on the section 112 of the Constitution it says that the National Assembly member should put national interest before personal interest, and should put conscience ahead of everything. So it means that you must act according to the dictates of conscience and the national interest. Of course, if you abide by that provision, then when you are in the National Assembly, whatever comes there, you must make sure that the right thing is done. And it is important to explain that a minister, this was a transitional government.
Yes.
And we did everything. What people wanted is Gambia to change. We were there with the knowledge and experience to be able to help in the process for Gambia to change. But people did not vote for us to put our program into operation. Otherwise, they would have said, there is no need for a coalition. Let us have this group from Doi to be, or this person from Doi to be the presidential candidate. What people said is they wanted the opposition to unite so that we can remove a self-perpetuating ruler from office. And that's what we helped to do. So after finishing that, it is Barrow who is now the president of the Gambia. People expected that you will have a Halifa Sallah there who will be telling Barrow what to do. You know, you cannot have two presidents in a country.
No, you can't.
You know, so you have one president, and that is President Barrow. What one could do is to give him advice. And advice is not mandatory for the person to implement it. Advice is just persuasive influence. You can advise and he accepts. You can advise, he refuses.
Are you still his advisor?
Well, you see, that is also something to be explained. You see, I was the spokesperson of the president and the spokesperson of the coalition when we started the process to move towards him assuming office. He was then president-elect. And therefore, the process of helping so that he assumes office was part of my responsibility. And therefore, of course, then I would be seen to be the president's advisor and spokesperson. But as soon as he assumes office as president of the republic, his duty is to appoint ministers. And once ministers are appointed, they become the advisors of the president and spokesperson in their different domain, which means that the agricultural minister will represent the president and advise the president on agriculture and speaks for the government on agriculture. The same with all the other ministries. And the government could also select one minister and say that, well, this person will also be a general spokesperson, you know, of the cabinet. That is the practice. I did not become a member of cabinet because sincerely I could analyze and see that this is a transitional cabinet. I have already made a decision to stand as a presidential candidate before and had decided to leave my role as a candidate for Barrow to stand.
Yes.
So which means that I had already decided that this person will run a transitional government, not to implement DOI policy. So in that sense, our duty is to help advise him on the transitional policies of the government. That is why, as the spokesperson of the coalition, I had played a role in preparing for a think tank to be established as far back as December, and the objective was to establish an agency for sustainable socio-economic development. And the idea would have led to having a core group of people to run that agency, and then an expert bank be created so that all those who can contribute to the development of the country will send their curriculum vitae. Then you put it into a database, and the government will be able to bring those people and transform them into clusters of experts around health, education, etc. And then those people will help the government to prepare a skeletal development blueprint for the president as soon as he assumes office to use that, and then the ministers will come and work to build that up. Well, that was the architecture before I left, you know, and before he assumed office. And once he assumes office, well, obviously then he has to look at all that and take the views of all his advisors, all his ministers, and ultimately decide how to run the country. I felt that it was better for me, rather than to hold a ministerial post and deal with just an aspect of government, because you cannot tell another minister, you know, what to do. Similarly, if the minister does what you don't want, you cannot say that I don't want what you have done. You have to accept. That's what you call collective responsibility. So if you don't accept what the other does, then it's your duty to resign. So I felt that the best way I and the party that I belong to could help the transition is to be in the National Assembly, where you can review everything that the government does, whether agriculture, economics, whatever, everything it does, you can review and state your opinion.
So you're still at the guidelines. So basically, you're just there to guide Gambia to see that things are going according to black and white.
Well, that was our duty for calling people to form a coalition, because we wanted to effect change. And now that we want a new Gambia, we felt that we were in a better position to facilitate the building of the new Gambia by being in the National Assembly, where we can review everything, and wherever we see that something is going wrong, we'll be able to point it out. Whilst at the same time, we can also propose solutions which the president can look at, because he's the power. He can look at and say, yes, this is what I'm going to implement. So your question, am I his advisor? Well, I was appointed to be a special advisor, and I had told the president then that a special advisor, paid all, just like with all the privileges of a minister, would require the person full time to give advice to the president, and would have to accept responsibility for every advice that is given. For me, I was convinced that a person who is paid all those privileges will find it very difficult to really be independent completely, because you are paid. And as a result, if the president does not do what you have said, well, then you also have to accept whatever is done, even if you don't believe that that is the right thing to be done. Issue of conscience did not permit me to really to be that type of a person who is paid to give advice. So I volunteered that I will be a voluntary advisor, not a paid advisor.
Not a paid advisor.
So which means that at this very moment, whenever the president seeks my advice on anything, and whenever I feel that I can give a particular advice, well, it is my duty to go and tell him that this is what I think.
But do you still do that? Do you still have that relationship with him?
Well, since it's not official, then I must say that that influence of giving my opinion comes from different angles. It comes from the National Assembly. There are other things that I would not want to go far with, because it is not my mandate. I'm not an official. I'm emphasizing that I'm not an official advisor of the president. I think that is the key thing.
Yes,
but I am a voluntary advisor of the president.
Because as a Gambian, I feel, I cannot speak for everybody, but I feel the president needs you as an advisor, needs lawyer Usainu Dabo as an advisor, needs OJ Jallo as an advisor. My reason for that is, you are the old school. Politics yesterday, yen la woon. Li happen Gambia depuis ci beginning bi yen la woon. So yen boo leen teewul loxoom ba léegi, you still have to hold him in the hand and advise him on what to do and some areas that he is about to put his foot down to. Because without the three of you strongly coming together or advising him, there could be a lot of change. There could be a lot of damages to this thing they call the New Gambia. Because the New Gambia, from where we are sitting, ñun gisuñ ne Gambia mu ngee dem.
Well, what you must bear in mind is you've asked very relevant questions. The executive is responsible for policy making. Now, the Gambian who is given a ministerial post is an advisor of the president. If you're a minister of agriculture, then you are an advisor of the president on agriculture. if you're given a ministerial post on foreign affairs, you are the advisor of the president on foreign affairs. So everybody who is given a ministerial post is an advisor of the president on that particular area, but as a member of the cabinet, you are also an advisor of the president. You are part of the government. So that is, you are correct in saying that, and I believe all those people you've mentioned, maybe I'm the only one who is not part of the cabinet. And I am part of the National Assembly. I'm analyzing all the bills that are coming there. I'm analyzing all the policies that are coming there. So the president is well advised. I believe that the president needs only information, and he is the decision maker. That's why I'm emphasizing that since the president was elected on an independent ticket, and since at this very moment, no sector of the National Assembly, no party has a majority where by your party alone you can impeach the president, my advice is that the president should become very independent of all these forces. And since the knowledge base is there, to be consulting anybody he feels he should consult. I'm sure anybody he calls and said that this issue I want you to advise me on, I'm sure that person will go and give him the best of advice. So,
do you think he needs to start calling me about media? I have a lot to advise him on.
Well, I guess I'm sure they're hearing you.
Yeah.
So this is the purpose of a think tank. This is purpose of such instruments, so that you have people who will look at things objectively and give you the right type of advice. But what is important for people to bear in mind is that if you know that some advices will be taken by a president and other advices will not be taken by a president, or you are inside a cabinet and you've given advices not heeded, then really the right thing to do is not to be part of that cabinet. So I'm saying that the reason why I decided not to be in a cabinet is that I don't want to be accountable for what that cabinet does. What I want is to be accountable for the advice I give. And the way I can do that is being in the National Assembly, that I can say whatever is in the interest of the nation. If the president takes it, it is him. If he fails to take it, it is him. I believe I'm comfortable with that role, and that is precisely the role that I am playing. In terms of the judiciary, as you've asked, well, that is what you call the state. You have the executive, powerful to receive revenue, spend revenue according to the law made in the National Assembly, approved in the National Assembly, to facilitate the development of the country. That's the rule of law. Now, when you say rule of law, you talk about laws being made. Who is going to administer the law? Well, it cannot be the president.
No.
It cannot be the legislature. It must be another institution, and that's why you have the judiciary.
Sure.
That the judiciary will be responsible now for looking at the laws, interpreting it, and implementing it. But the judiciary also cannot make the laws. Its decisions, of course, sometimes it has precedence. That's why when they go to court, they will say, well, this decision was made by a higher court, then the lower courts will abide by it.
Right. And
it goes all the way to because people have the right to appeal up to the Supreme Court. So final decision, usually it has persuasive influence. But that is if there is no law that is above it. It is also important to bear in mind that the supreme law is the Constitution, and it is the Supreme Court that is given the responsibility to interpret that supreme law. And any law that goes against it, it can be declared null and void. Any practice that goes against it can be considered null and void. So in short, that is the role of having an executive, a legislature, and a judiciary.
Thank you. Okay, now, Sister Toby, we noticed that you have been to different places, and now I want to come to the Waste management. So, given that the limited resources of municipal council, like KMC, BCC, and the challenges they face, don't you think it would be very good idea to consider having central government and municipal and environmental projects like waste management? And Sisa Nyobi, Demga Oslo, Demonga si waste management living be. So what have you learned from that visit from the waste management in Oslo and water treatment plants in Göteborg. What have you learned from it, and what will you take back to Gambia with that? And are you going to maintain that contact and connection you have with them?
It is very significant. I went to these places precisely because of the challenges of the Gambia. Waste is a challenge. The Bakoto dump site could have led to real catastrophes if it was not eventually managed. Because waste has been dumped there since the First Republic. Now, according to some of them, the groundwater is actually being polluted, and the outlying wells can no longer be used to drink, and they have not actually been provided with pipe-borne water in some of the areas. They do not have capacity to draw in water. So you have a situation where sometimes gases are produced and then inflamed, and those that the smoke will actually pollute the whole environment. And I think you can see Bakote, it's just adjacent to the SOS village. So the outlying area, with the odor, with the smoke, with the pollutants, with all the groundwater being polluted, had come to a point where they felt that this is becoming a disaster and that something needs to be done by it. Well, many actions were taken because of the new dispensation, thinking that, well, by protesting in a peaceful manner, ultimately the state will take the right type of actions. We've seen that the problem still persists. I've gone to, I became a National Assembly member. I held meetings with the KMC, Mayor. I have worked out a whole analysis of the situation, and we have seen that at the moment, the actions, I've raised questions in Parliament. The Minister of Environment had come to answer those questions, and he did explain what they intended to do. That is to manage the waste being disposed so that it will be environmentally friendly and ultimately move the waste. But then, through discussion with the KMC, they had said that many people had come to talk about recycling, but words are not backed by deeds. So generally then, at this material time, nothing, since the time I was leaving the country, nothing was in place to actually handle the issue of waste disposal. So therefore, indiscriminate dumping of waste continued, and here and there at the Sandika in Serakunda, waste will not be picked up. They will go to a point where you will see all sorts of filth coming and maggots and all. So it's a very horrible sight. We call it really eyesores. That cannot continue. And that is why at home we started a process where I got some people with experience to chart and see what we can do in the interim as we move towards a better solution. And what we started doing is start with one home to see how the waste will be managed. And food is seen as something that could be transformed into fertilizer. So therefore that home will now collect all that is food and be able to dig a hole at the back of the compound and dump it there and cover it so that it goes into the soil and serve as compost. And now at the same time, things that are plastic, definitely you cannot burn them because they can be toxic. So those ones, can be put in a bag, so that it can be disposed by the council. But the question is, where will they take it? It is also important to put paper which can be burned, to burn it, but it would have been better to preserve it. Now we will not preserve it, but we will burn it. Bottles and all put together to see who would want the bottles. There are certain things that are already being bought, like iron, anything that deals with metal. Obviously, people want that, and they are already buying that. So a process has started, and in fact, this recess, I should have been engaged right now in going into street by street into the community with people from the environmental agency to at least talk to people that they can start this process.
Okay.
And then, of course, the pressure will now go to the council, how to pick those bags that cannot be disposed of by the families and where they will take it. Of course, that is why my visit to this waste disposal agency was designed to see what they are doing with waste. And what has become very clear is that waste, as they rightly said, which we have taken definitely, that waste is not garbage, that waste is resource.
Yeah.
So that is the clarion call. Waste is a resource. It can be recycled. And when I explain what we started, then they explain exactly that that's what is happening in the homes. They have bags, and these bags in different colors, and they put the waste in these different colors. So since they have a really sophisticated machine that can discriminate the bags and put them into different areas, so they are transforming the waste into different resources and recycling many a bulk of the waste.
But do you think that will work in the Gambia?
Well, I'm coming. That the reality is, what could not be recycled, then that is incinerated in order to transform it into energy, which is providing most of the electricity that is required, to heat the water during winter for many of these countries. And I've seen that a similar thing is happening in Sweden, but I believe Norway is, in my own calculation, is a bit ahead in terms of the management. At least Oslo, is a bit ahead in terms of waste management because they are moving very far in terms of the discrimination of waste and being able to recycle it. So we have told them that, well, we cannot necessarily buy that sophisticated machine, even though we've asked them to send us details about the cost. So, but what could be done is to start from where they were, and that is the issue of landfill, being able to bury the waste. But we also believe that that is not the answer, because we've seen that even though we have not reached the level of landfill is putting all waste together and putting it in, and they have said that up till now gases come out of those landfills which can still pollute the environment. So which means that when we go back, we have to sit down and see how we can move halfway into at least helping families to at least discriminate the waste, separate it, and put it in their proper places, and convince the council to be able to make a decision on where to put different aspects of this waste, so that whatever is plastic, since it could be recycled, we can start immediately to have link with people who can engage in the recycling of plastic, recycling whatever they can recycle, just like iron is being recycled. So at least we should come to conclusion about certain things and make a contract with those who can do the recycling.
Because I was gonna talk about that, and I feel that all of these can take place or can happen if you guys do more on creating more awareness.
Yes,
and sensitize people. Because without that, no matter how much you take back home, it's not going to work, because these people are not aware of it.
Not only
even us here, even Nyunsa, Sweet Bopa, we have in our homes different bags, different different bags where to put bottles and all this. Sometimes instead of me putting bottle in where the bottles should go, I put the food. I put different things where the bottle should go.
Yes, it's habit.
Yeah, it's a habit.
But what we've seen is that you cannot educate until you have a system.
Yes.
Now we don't have a system.
Okay.
So it means that the first task is to put a system in place. No matter how crude, a system has to be put in place. So my primary objective is immediately upon return, we will experiment with what we are saying, and then we will negotiate with KMC to put a system in place. We'll have a pilot project, get 2-3 compounds to do this consistently, and then we will know the type of waste that is generated, and then we contact the KMC and say, how do we put this system in place, and we put a system in place, then you can educate people, do this, and this is what is going to happen, because if they separate the waste and the KMC cannot collect that type of waste, or take plastic and still dump it, or all those things and dump it in the same place, of course you run with the same problem. So in short, we will start to examine the problem, build up a system as a pilot, and then move towards a grander solution, which is really recycling. Okay. One thing that was very interesting, which we discovered in our discussion in Stockholm, is that certain machines, small machines, just like milling machines, can provide some amount of flour. These machines also can recycle plastics. Okay. So which means that one can encourage small middle-scale enterprises to come in. Just like we have those people making kitchen apparels by using aluminum foil and buying canned drinks, and then turn them into aluminum and then into cooking utensils. We can start the same process, people with small scale equipments, and then recycle the plastic products that are available into other things, since the plastic bags are now out of the way, and definitely they should be looked into, but essentially without recycling you cannot have any form of plastic of that nature to be used in the country. So it is important to ensure that all plastic things could now be put somewhere and taken, and the process of recycling will commence. Okay. And then with bigger machines, of course, you have bigger recycling. Okay. That is the answer.
All right. Now I want to go to like the back way, the situation of the back way. It's affecting the youths. Now I can see that even older people and women are even taking the back way. At some point I thought this was going to stop, but it's not stopping. You visited the International Organization for Immigration. For migration, IOM, right? And how can that visit be of benefits to vulnerable Gambians, especially Gambian youths, who voluntarily returned back home and who are about to go back home?
Yes, if a place like Norway, Oslo, there is a project of giving some sum of money for those people who are vulnerable groups. I will not say how much money, because I don't want to advertise the program and undermine their program. And they also give some money to those who are not part of the vulnerable group, so that they can have a start when they are in the Gambia. I will be doing a comprehensive analysis of that whole program by visiting the headquarters, the regional headquarters, as well as to look at the Gambian office to see what they are doing, because this issue needs to be handled from a very objective point of view, so that we address the problem. You have said that, yes, you thought it will stop. Let's start with that, because in our discussion with them, we dealt with that particular issue. 60% of the population of the Gambia live in the rural area, 40% in the urban area. In the urban area, you do not find any established industries that could employ, to understand that jobs are not available. Many people in the rural areas also are earning very little income. That will not help them to be able to improve the conditions of their families. And that is why they too come to the urban areas, and from the urban areas to move out. Now, if relatives move, then they also help the family to improve its living conditions by encouraging other relatives to move. So there is a push factor in migration, and we have to address the push factor. And of course, we have to have government policies that will be able to generate the jobs that we need. But that is, we now have a transitional government. If it was a government that was elected on the basis of its policies, then now we'll be demanding either you step down or make sure that your policies work. Because that is an essential element in building the type of economy that will be able to produce the jobs, so that the vast majority of our people will either through small scale, medium scale enterprises, through cooperatives, etc., will be able to earn their keep. That is absolutely essential. And in the rural areas, so that the family farms will have the fertilizer, seeds, and farming implements necessary so that they can produce much more than they are producing now, so that they'll be able to have self-sufficiency and even added income to improve their lives. So the economy is the basis of handling the issue of migration. But in the interim, instead of foreign governments taking billions and put it in security apparatus to prevent people from coming in, what is important is for them to realize that they should focus on the person who is moving. And the way to do that is to have projects for the young people that will be supported by this government, so that young people will engage in poultry there, buy these machines that will process certain things, put them in bags, and these countries will also accept to support the examination of whatever machines they will have, so that at least whatever is produced will be of good quality, international standard, so that they could be exported to those countries that are giving the support. It is through that that we can start to manage the migration issue in a positive manner. And I believe IMF offices everywhere must take up that particular agenda. Number one, that when people are being returned, you must have reception centers for them, so that at the airport, people who have the competence, the knowledge, the qualification in terms of counseling will be there at the home ground to receive them. And then those who are receiving them, the IOM offices should be well equipped with staff, so that the next day those people will be able to go there, and then they should have had the experience and would have the resources to be able to say that yes, go and prepare this project and come, we can assist you with the project proposals and preparation, so that at the end of the day, the IMF offices will now serve those very people who return and may have gone back again because of frustration, to be able to at least reconsider sitting down and wait for development to catch up with them. And then they should have programs which will provide small scale, medium scale enterprises to be able to provide them with the jobs that are necessary. Well, this is the reform that I discussed with the IMF office, and I believe we saw eye to eye. In fact, they have seen all this and have been propagating all this issue that migration should be seen also not as an evil, but as a resource that had facilitated the development of countries. What is necessary is to manage it, of course, so that there will not be overspills, and therefore those people who are moving should be assisted. Their concerns should be taken into consideration, and therefore, in that sense, we'll be able to build up a system to be able to handle them in the meantime.
Thank you. I know the time li mu ñoo jàmm waaye am na yoo xam ne dafa ma dugal ko ci biir. We know that National Assembly is dominated by men, and we want to see more women in there. Are you doing something about it?
Well, as you can see, it's an agenda. For political parties, we have a transitional government. But if you look at the manifestos of political parties, obviously, you will see that some parties have made this a priority. The party I represent takes this very seriously, that we should move to a proportional representation system, because first past the post will not help automatically to balance parliament. Because as a woman, you have to go and raise the funds, do a campaign, stand and win an election. So a party can have 50% of its members, candidates standing, who are women, but end up not even winning one seat. So what we need to do is to have proportional representation. And what proportional representation do is that, one, you have a list. You can say that 20% of the members of the National Assembly will be voted for on the basis of constituency. But the other 80% will prepare a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the list must be one man, one woman, one man, one woman, until your list is complete. Since you are going to be allocated seats on the basis of percentage, meaning that if you have 10%, maybe you will be entitled to 4 seats. Then with those 4 seats, of course, the people in your list, number 1, will be a man or a woman. Number 2 will be a woman or a man. So it will go in that sequence. So you'll have 2 men and 2 women for your party in the National Assembly. All the other parties will do the same. And we believe that by ensuring that the number of seats, if divided into 3, will give you 30% or 2/3. So then you will be able to say we can guarantee that 1/3 of the members of the National Assembly will be women and the other 1/3 will be men. And of course, it would be a reality because you have proportional representation. So we are recommending very strongly that we either go totally to proportional representation or a mixed bag of constituency elections and proportional representation in terms of percentage allocation of seats in the National Assembly. We believe that that is the way to solve the problem.
Okay. Thank you for that, Harold. Léegi nag moom time bi nag moom maa jàmm bu baax a baax te affaires are interesting, but still I'm still gonna push it and put it in in the yeneen. All right. As you are a National Assembly member, when will Gambians start seeing the constitutional reforms, especially on term limits, to ensure that no one stays in power above their invitation?
Well, this is the debate that is now current in our society, and we'll intensify that debate because it's part of the program of the coalition to have constitutional, institutional, electoral, legislative, judicial, civil service, as well as security service reforms. A lot of plans are being made, a lot of discussion around these issues, and we even had the Attorney General's chambers did, in fact, organize a forum on the issue of transitional justice and constitutional reforms. But the issue is, are we waiting to have a whole constitutional review and then come up with a new constitution, or are we going to have a review of the current constitution and then have a program of constitutional reform? Our position is that let's come up with the immediate package right now. Let's not waste time. The term limit should be there. If you can come up with a package of 65 years being removed, and we have done so in terms of the National Assembly has actually accepted. What is important is, before we talk about that, why didn't we also include in that package the term limit, the absolute majority principle, the issue of nobody being able to remove National Assembly members from the National Assembly because of being driven from their political parties, the issue of checking the powers of the executive in terms of appointment of ministers, of ambassadors, where they'll appear before the National Assembly, at least for a hearing, before the approval of their appointments. Well, these are all issues that you can put in a package and immediately bring before the National Assembly after publishing it for 3 months, and then another not less than 10 days. So within a period of 6 months that we have already spent, we could have had the major constitutional reforms, especially reform of one, which is very crucial, because at this moment, if the president, something happened to the president, what the Constitution says, the vice president should assume office and serve the rest of the term.
Yes.
if there's no vice president, and at this moment there's no vice president unless the person has been appointed yesterday, then it means that the Speaker of the National Assembly will be the president of the country for the rest of the term.
Okay.
So it means that you need a constitutional reform, which the Gambia Opposition for Electoral Reform has already recommended for the government, a constitutional reform where you will say in the constitution that if the office of president becomes vacant, within 3 months you have election to the office of president. So without that, obviously, we are still in a state of uncertainty. And with that, Barrow could also resign after 3 years, and you will still have election to the office of president. So those issues should now be treated immediately. Rather than wait for general review of a constitution, which is also dangerous because you can now erode, in fact, the gains that have been made and put in provisions that we would not want under the circumstances. So
okay. I have this question that I really want to take out of my chest. Actually, it's two. One is many Gambians are spreading rumors that Gambia is insecure. And looking at the Kanilai, I think, is it Farato and Bakote incidents? For me, my take is, don't you think there is some truth to this fear in the insecurity of the country?
Well, you know, governance
that's my thinking.
Yeah. Governance is twofold. Nothing is permanent. Security is not permanent. It depends on how you govern. We moved through a transition which was very dangerous. But the fact that we had a peaceful outcome, that meant that Gambia was stable and peaceful. Because, one, the economic forces did not enter prior to Jammeh's departure. Number two, after Jammeh's departure, there was no looting. There was no loss of government papers. There was no killing of people, attacking and killing people. So everything was intact. That's why when we had that contradiction where I announced that the Inspector General of Police had gone and everything had been made sure that they are intact, based on his consultation with those who control all those public enterprises and departments. Some people, no, Jammeh has taken this sum of money. You know, you don't do that, because when you say somebody has taken money, that's when people steal and take money away. But when papers are intact and somebody tells you something has happened, fine. That will be discovered. All you need is to audit the accounts. You will know what has missed, and then you will follow and know that what is responsible is gone. So that's how you manage, you know, a transition, that everything was intact, government properties, etc. So with that situation, obviously, and up till that time, there were no economic forces in the country. And all those military hardware that were there, etc., there were no economic forces. And that is the asset of the country, and I want President Barrow to bear that in mind, because there are people who knew nothing, and they're the one who do all the shouting, you know, under the circumstances. We must bear in mind that people who were there in serious position of responsibility exercise tremendous responsibility in keeping things intact. Okay. So economic forces came after everything was kept intact. And even their coming could have destabilized. There's a way that we handled it to stabilize the situation. So in short, if Jammeh had Casamas, rebels, and all power to destabilize the country, at that time when he controlled everything, why would he leave? So the fact that he left with all those things, powers, etc., showed that definitely President Barrow inherited a very stable and peaceful country. And what we do after that is what can destabilize the country. And you've mentioned these incidents. Well, of course, the Kanilai incident, we have already addressed it. The minister has told people in parliament, and president has had press conferences. Everybody saw the incident as an unfortunate incident in terms of the death, and that we need to handle the issue in terms of reconciliation. So that is important, that such a thing should not reoccur again. We should know how to handle it. And that's why you see Bakote, it was almost being mishandled. It was eventually handled, and it ended up in peace. Faratu incident, we know what the incident was. Well, there were attempts also to go again and destroy, but I think advice has actually been taken to see that the period now is for the person who handled executive authority, that is President Barrow, to be very independent of all factions and thinking, and have a thinking of his own. And any issue, he seeks the best of advice before action, so that reoccurrence will not happen. For example, the issue of Farad. All you need is to establish the commission, because the commission in law is already established. Because we have an act to establish a lands commission. And the land question was the question in Farad. People who feel that they have built their homes and they have their families, all of a sudden, somebody come and say that, it must be torn down, it must be demolished. This created, some confusion and antagonism. So you need a lands commission. And all that the President Barrow needs to do now is to appoint the commissioners, so that they will sit and deal with all land disputes.
Okay.
And this is how all disputes should be handled. And I believe that the country is stable. What is important now is for people not to continue the type of antagonism between tribes and people attacking on tribal angles. And when you go with that type of sentiment, obviously you end up destabilizing an issue. And that's what must be avoided.
Okay. And the other one is, it's a concern that I have for civil servants. Because I have noticed that a lot of posts are given to people who are, okay, yeah, they know the job, maybe, but I feel the civil servants have been there, they have served the country, they have served the institute that they're working for, or whatever they are working for. But I have seen posts given to other people that were not even near that place. So I feel civil servants are not treated right, and we are like here singing praises of like New Gambia, human rights, equal treatment, but civil servants, because same post in you and they have worked hard for it, and I think that a protocol should be followed. Like civil, you start from there going up.
Well, I agree 100% with you that when you take over a country, you must know the institutions. You must know who constitute the architecture of those institutions, running it, because they have institutional memory. So it is important that whatever reform you take must be through establishing commissions to review salaries, to review the whole structure of departments and the services they are rendering, with competent bodies, with the intention of ensuring that competence is rewarded. So these are issues that need to be taken from that angle. You don't hastily come and say, remove you being there. So obviously, you would have had to carry out a whole staff review.
Because there should be priority.
And then, yes, and then come up with a report. Whether you have square pegs in round holes, whether somebody, and you must audit accounts. For example, you cannot just come, somebody is managing director of it, you say, no, I remove you. Well, obviously, you must have your audited accounts that really shows what the person has done, and you see wrongdoing, and then you remove the person on the basis of that. Or you do a staff audit and you see that this is square peg in round hole based on solid recommendation, and you can prove. When people, removed on the basis of truth, or somebody else come implanted on the basis of truth, you don't object. You really believe that the right thing is done, and that is how you handled a country.
Okay.
So this is an opinion, of course. The question is who has been removed, who has been put, who is not competent, who is this. Well, this is what a democratic society is all about. Those one should complain, they come to me as National Assembly member, write a petition, write to the press, I am this, I could be that. So those are the issues that can be taken up. And the ombudsman is there, is to write a petition to the ombudsman and raise those issues. Yes, that is the way. That is the way.
I hope when you leave, this is like I'm asking you to do this for me. I want an interview with President Barrow because I have so many questions for you, and I feel it's good for you as a National Assembly member, and it's good for him as well as the President of the Gambia.
Yes.
And I want that to happen for me. Let me say a text is meeting. I cannot sit down here, interview you, and not talk about media. Even that, I want to ask him that question as much as I am going to ask you that question. Media, because media. Okay, what small question?
No, you are very right. Yes. I'm sure many people are hearing you. I hope he himself is hearing you. That's the importance of the media.
I don't think he will listen to someone like me anyway.
Yeah. But what was interesting is that you were there. You came. You left.
Yes, I was
there. Yeah, you left here.
Yes.
I saw you there.
Yes.
Whilst I was right there in mainstream.
I was everywhere. I was there annoying all of you.
Yeah. Well, so not annoying. I think it was in fact really unexpected that somebody will leave here and go, especially a woman, and go there for no other purpose but to help people to understand what was happening. And even before there, when things were there, you were calling me,
yes,
asking me what was happening at the time. I never knew you.
I wanted to keep that a secret.
No, but that was reality.
Yeah.
You were trying to find out what was happening. And I was the spokesperson. I was receiving correspondence from all over the world. Now I try to imagine how it was possible for me to do that. And the media was satisfied, or were satisfied, the whole world, and it was almost 24 hours on call. So what the people call 24/7. So in reality, you came and you made a presence. And Africa was GRTS.
Let me put it in so that you can answer it that way.
Yeah.
Because I wrote here, like, okay, media played a very big role in bringing Jammeh down.
Yes.
We all know that.
Yes.
Okay. And during that time, Mr. Sallah, honestly, during that time, I think all of you saw the media houses in Gambia very useful.
Yes,
very, very useful.
They were being closed down by the minute and by the second, because every time I had an interview,
yes,
the next thing, closed down. But again, the struggle so that it will open up again, and it continues like that. And not only that, but during the election, the media played a big role in opening up for people to understand the issues, the debates, etc. So the newly found freedom of the media is not given, it's earned. Because the very government that came into being relied on that very media as a support base to come into power. So there is absolutely no doubt that the current Minister of Information, the whole government must begin to work with the media nationally, internationally, the Gambian diaspora, especially the online media,
yes,
to see how they could be assisted to move into a higher level of delivery of services. How did TFM develop? How does all this? So we have all this media in Senegal.
I'm very saddened by something that's going on. It's like this. Gambia is a very small country, and the media houses in Gambia is like we're all over the place. But being a television, people, we all understand that. So the fact that come Senegal. So ñun mi fa nekk di def fi media bini. I feel we should be given a lot of opportunity, especially when it comes to interviewing people like you, high-profile people like like you. We should be given the opportunity to do that, but they limit us to it, and it's very, 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 very unfair. Because yen solo ñu joxu that platform pour ñu mëna def lolu nonu. How will we go further?
Yes, I think the starting point now, we are identifying the challenges. And I believe what we must do now is to ensure that this information you are giving me is carried on. But we must become more structured. We must see that the Gambia Press Union must work with all of you and then work with the ministry so that we know what the challenges are. You've mentioned wanting to grant interview. Why a foreign media and not a Gambian media having priority? Well, this is an issue. We'll transform it into a challenge. We'll transform it into a challenge so that at least you'll be satisfied that, well, this is the outlet. If I want to interview President Barrow, either to contact the Minister of Information and there is a desk officer responsible for that, or at least the press secretary, you know, at the office of the president, this is the person I need to contact. So, number one, what you are demanding is to be able to interview President Barrow whenever the situation demands. Now we are saying we need a channel of communication. So, when I go back, that is my duty to contact the ministry, etc., office of president. Well, please establish a channel of communication, advertise it that whoever wants this, well, channel it here, and we'll try to make sure.
And let me say this, and this is the first time I'm going to say this. I was given an opportunity to have an interview with the First Lady and the second, and take a photo shoot with them. And I don't know what went wrong. I was there for 3 weeks. Everything was fine, seal done. Last minute, they turned me down, say it's not happening anymore. I really want to know why it's not going to happen anymore. As a female, I'm not a journalist. I just love what I'm doing. But I feel I should be able to sit down with the First Lady and ask her questions. Well, talk to her.
Well, you are
I don't see why I should be limited.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're expressing the challenges now. And when something happens, of course, we learn from it. We cannot live in the past. That's why I'm saying that when I go back, since I came here to listen to all the challenges, well, I'll be an advocate with the ministry, with the President's office, you know, so that, so that...
I will hold you to it. Well, I think this is the end of a very beautiful interview with me and Mr. Halifa Sallah. But one thing I must say is, the tour that you have just done, is it going to benefit you as a politician, or is it going to benefit the Gambia?
Well, you know that I am not the one who can answer that question. My intention was to serve those who invited me.
Yes.
And that is the Gambian community in Norway, Sweden, then soon Denmark, Austria and Germany. They are in a better position to assess from diverse political background whether I have misrepresented anyone or whether I have been an asset to everyone. And I believe if they assess and see that I have been an asset to everyone, then my tour is a success. If they see that I have really misrepresented everyone, then my tour is a failure. So you will determine the value of my tour.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Thank
and
you.
I hope to see you again. Mang la ñaanal dina la yàlla defal fan bu gudd ak wér-gu-yaram. Yàlla yàggal la suñ biir. Well, li ma leen waxoon ak li ma leen digoon yéen ñëpp gis ngeen ko. Waxoon naa leen ne dinaa leen indil exclusive ci Uncle Halifa Sallah, Honorable Halifa Sallah. And alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin indil naa leen ko. Maa ngi ñaan nag yéen ñëpp di jéggalu nag ci time bi nga xam ne dama late as usual yi wax naa leen ko da ngeen ko war a miin ci man léegi man madame late laa waaye xam naa jéggal ngeen ma parce que tegal naa leen ci table bi li jar a teg ci table bi te di ñaan nag ñi nga xam ne yéen ci biir yéen yeneen ministres yi am coming for you I'll be knocking your door ñëwoon naa nag ci yéen ngeen maa tuy santoo di ma let down léegi nag maa ngi ci biir nag damaa ñëwaat ci yéen nogaat seen doo yi so maa ngi bëgg a waxtaan ak yéen ñëpp even President Barrow I'm coming for you. I want to talk to all of you. Gambia, it's one Gambia, one nation, and it's for all of us. Proud to be a Gambian and proud to be here and serve you this today. Thank you very much. See ya.